Welcome. If you're just joining us, it's a cold January night here in central Iowa, and we're doing the 4,000 mile service interval on the Yamaha FJ-09. This video is specifically for the spark plug replacement and or gapping and checking the condition of the spark plugs. So far in the process, we've removed the fuel tank, the seat, the fuel tank cover and trim and side panels. If you need instructions on how to do that, I have another video which will be in the description called Fuel Tank Removal and Throttle Body Sync that tells you step by step how to get to this point with your fuel tank removed and what bolts to take out and so forth. So watch that video if you need help getting to this point. But what we're going to do from this point on is pick up where we left off in the throttle body sync video as far as removal of the spark plugs. We're going to be, in my case, checking the condition and then confirming the gap is correct. If you were wanting to replace your spark plugs, you could do that as well. So what we're going to do is work on getting that done. One thing I do have to stress is do this with a cold engine. I cannot stress that enough. This engine is made primarily of aluminum, and I know from experience what happens when you try to remove a spark plug from a hot aluminum engine head. I have personally pulled the threads out of a aluminum car engine head, and then I had to end up removing the entire head and installing a helicoil in that head because the threads came loose doing this on a hot engine. So do this on a completely cold engine, which really is. It's not been run. Actually, you know, in January it's been probably a month since this bike has been run. But, you know, as long as you can grab hold of the exhaust with your hand, you're in good shape. You know, just, you know, make sure the engine is at ambient temperature. So let me show you what we're dealing with and what we need to do. You can see this is a 3-cylinder motor, and if you look closely you can see 3 ignition coils. Let me shine the light. So one of them is right there underneath the crankcase breather hose, right there. Got the wire connector harness plugging into it. There is number 2 cylinder, and there is number 3 cylinder. And this is our air induction system breather hose. Both of these hoses plug into the air box. So what we're going to do to start to access our spark plugs, which are under the ignition coils, is we're going to remove the crankcase breather hose from the head or crankcase breather port on the cylinder head, get that out of the way. And I'm going to remove the air induction system breather hose, so that will allow me to have a clear shot to remove the wiring harness connector from each of the coils on plug, and then we'll remove the coils and have access to the spark plugs. So just a moment and I will get that done, or actually I'll probably try and do it so you can watch. Just a moment. Okay, what you just watched me do is remove the air induction system valve and hoses. And I want to show you how this works a moment, since I have it off. This port right here connects to this tube, which connects to the side of your airbox. So right here you got the airbox, then down here it connects to this valve. This right here is a spring-loaded valve, and this top piece is just a rubber cap. So this comes off of here, and it's just a rubberized cap covering this valve. An electronic connector plugs into here, and you just press the little tab on the electronic connector and pull it off. And then if you look in here closely, and you shine a light in here, you can see the valve. I've got to get maybe where you can see it. Yeah, so there's the spring in there, and the solenoid valve is actuated by the ECU and electronic connector, allows air to flow from the airbox down into these two little hoses right here, which connect to the back of the cylinder head and allow air to flow into the exhaust manifold. So this piece right here is the primary portion of what you would call the air induction system. And basically all these hoses just come off with hose clamps, pliers, or a hose clamp pliers was helpful in one or two cases. A hose clamp pliers, if you're not familiar with it, let me show you that. This right here is a hose clamp pliers. Mine's got a little rust on it, unfortunately. I need to get that off of it. But it just has these two clips right here, which, depending on the size of the hose clamp, these are relatively small. They just hook right here, and when I squeeze, there's a cable that pulls this tight, and if I hold this hose clamp here, I squeeze it, and then it opens the hose clamp, but then I can let go and it locks it in the open position, so then I can just slide it off the rubber hose. And it's a very handy tool because it allows you to slide in to areas where you might have trouble getting your hand or a pair of pliers, and it holds the hose clamp open for you, so it's a handy tool to have. You can get a relatively inexpensive model from an auto parts store for probably 10, 12 bucks, I'm guessing. So I suggest if you don't have this in your toolbox, you pick one up, and I just hit this release button, and that opens up the pliers and lets my hose clamp loose. So that was helpful to get a couple of those hose clamps off without struggling too much. So let me show you. Right now, we have easy access to all three coil-on plugs. This would be, I'm going to call it cylinder 1, 2 here, and 3. So what you can watch me do is I'm just going to press the tab here on to the coil, and granted, now I am being careful. We're dealing with our coils, which I don't want to have to replace. I'm going to be gentle with them. So I'm just going to press this tab here and slide it back, and that removes the electrical connector to the coil-on plug. Do that for cylinder 2. And the connector for cylinder 1 is in a different orientation, so I'm going to slide my hand in from the side here. And I'm doing this one-handed. If I had two hands, this would be a lot easier. I'm going to switch hands. Okay, there you go. The coil is off each of the the electrical harness is off each of the coil-on plugs. So then, to get these out of here, we're just going to turn them a little bit, start with to loosen them up, and then we're going to just gently apply pressure and wiggle side to side and until they come up. So hopefully that happens pretty easily. I'm going to get this to stay here a moment. Okay, well, I've just took the coils, or the coil unplug connector, off of the spark plugs. That was difficult. The factory did not appear to use any dielectric grease, and the angle at which those plugs are at, especially while trying to film it for you guys and shine the light in there, made it really difficult to get those plugs out. When you do this yourself, be very careful. The temptation is to just want to pry hard on the electrical connector portion of the coil unplug. That is very risky, especially as the bike gets older. That plastic is going through many heat cycles. It's going to get hard and brittle. You could easily destroy a plug doing that, or not a coil, the ignition wire coil piece doing that, and then you're going to have to go buy new ones, however many you break. First of all, twist it back and forth. And while you twist, apply firm, steady pressure upwards, straight upwards, not at an angle, back and forth. Have patience. You gotta have patience doing this if you want to succeed without breaking it. Just twist back and forth, pull up with steady pressure. If you just have to use a tool like a screwdriver or pliers to pull on it, don't be very cautious doing that. Just better to use your hands. You'll have way more control over how much pressure you apply rather than trying to lever them off. You do what you got to do, but just, have patience, be cautious, twist back and forth, steady pressure. Hopefully, since you won't have your light the way I did and your camera, you can get better angles, you can get this. So now we're ready to take the spark plugs out, and I'll show you that. The spark plugs are down in this socket, in this hole in your engine cylinder head cover. Now, this is a brand new bike still, and there wasn't any dirt in here, but if you got to, really before you remove the coil unplug piece, if you noticed that there was a lot of dirt, you'd want to use compressed air and blow any dirt away before doing this, because you don't want any dirt to fall into your cylinders. So now what I'm going to do is take a spark plug wrench with a spark plug socket, a socket wrench with a spark plug socket, stick it down in the hole, and gently but firmly loosen it until it comes out. And then we'll be able to inspect the condition of our spark plug, measure and adjust the gap, or you could just replace them with new ones, whatever you choose to do. Okay, I've got my first spark plug out. I took the center one out first, and this is what it looks like. You can see the color on it at just shy of 3,000 miles is pretty good. But what I really did all this work for to get to here, in addition to shoot this video, is to check the gap. Now, I want to give you what is just my opinion about spark plugs. These are a stock copper-based spark plug. Let me read you the exact name of the plug. It's a NGK CPR9EA9. Like I said, that's the stock plug for this bike. It's a copper electrode. The service manual says that you should gap this plug every 4,000 miles and you should replace it at 8,000 miles. Now, personally, I believe this plug would go much greater than 8,000 miles. Could be 25 or 50,000 miles on a copper plug. A lot of people out there will choose to put in iridium or platinum-based plugs. And if you choose to do that, great. The plug will easily go 100,000 miles or more. But the thing to remember, and I guess it just depends on how much this matters to you, is that you're riding a motorcycle, an FJ-09 specifically, not driving a Honda Civic. And if you want to achieve the best power and the best fuel efficiency and have the best throttle response, the spark plug gap matters. And so if you do what you are supposed to do, and that is gap the spark plug every 4,000 miles, you can, I guess what I'm saying is I don't see why you would spend the extra money on an iridium or a platinum-based plug. Now, you may have a different opinion on that, and that's fine. But if I'm going to remove this spark plug every 4,000 miles and replace it at 8,000 miles or even 16,000 miles, double the interval, like the book says, this plug, I don't know the exact price, but it's probably $3 or $4 to replace this plug. So for a 3-cylinder bike, you're looking at $12 for brand new plugs. Whereas an iridium or a platinum-based plug is probably $7, $8, $9 a plug. I don't know, I'm just guessing, speculating. But it's certainly going to be more expensive than a copper-based plug. And if you're doing all the work to get to the point where you gap the spark plug every 4,000 miles, why not just replace your 3 plugs every 8, 12, 16,000 miles, whatever. Basically, whenever the copper plug needs replaced, why not just replace it? You're not really going to save any money, is what I'm trying to imply, by purchasing an iridium or a platinum-based plug. And if you gap your plugs every 4,000 miles, you're not going to save yourself any time, effort, work of having to remove the plugs. So the benefit of those plugs is defeated if you follow this, do what you're supposed to and gap your plug. So let me show you how to do that. This is a traditional spark plug gapping tool. It has 6 different wires of different thicknesses that you, depending on the spark plug, you'd slide the wire into the space between the electrode and the ground. And there, if you want it to, if when using the correctly sized wire, it should just barely snugly fit in that space. They also make cheaper ramp style gauges. Those are not as good, not as accurate. I recommend get a wire style gauge. However, this particular spark plug gap tool is really designed for cars, and it has all of the gaps, all the wires on this plug tool are too large for the FJ-09 spark plug. The correct spark plug gap, let me read it to you, is 0.8 to 0.9 millimeters, or 0.031 thousandths of an inch to 0.035 thousandths of an inch. So I have a feeler gauge here with some spark plug gapping wires on it as well. And the correctly sized wires are right here. So I've got 0.025 thousandths, 0.03 thousandths, 0.034 thousandths. I flip it over, and those equate to 0.635 millimeters, 0.762 millimeters, and 0.864 millimeters. So the center wire there, the 0.03 30 thousandths wire, is theoretically just a hair too small for being in gap, but that would be really close. The 34 thousandths wire right here would be perfect. We would like this wire to fit in our spark plug gap, just barely with a firm amount of friction, but not be so tight it won't go in or it doesn't move, and so forth. So let me show you the 30 thousandths wire a moment. If I can do this through the camera lens. Okay, so the 30 thousandths wire slides through fairly easily. It slides right through to the other side of the plug. Okay. The 34 thousandths wire is exactly right. It'll go in with just a little bit of a force. It's if I apply a little force, that's what we've got. It did go through, but I had to kind of push on it just right. And now I get it to come back the other way. Come on. Okay, got it off. So I am content to say then that my spark plug gap is 34 thousandths of an inch, and that is exactly right what the book spec calls out for this spark plug gap. So I can now put this spark plug back in the cylinder head, and it'll be good to go until, in theory, the 8,000 mile inspection correctly gapped. And at that point, I'll probably go ahead and replace the plugs, just because that's what the service manual calls for, but we'll see, maybe not. If the spark plug still looks good and the gap is correct and all that, I may not. We'll just, we'll see at that time. But that is how you remove a spark plug from an FJ-09 and then properly gap it. So good luck with that. Here's a look at the right side cylinder's spark plug. Come on, focus. The gap is correct. This is the left side of the bike, the left cylinder. Okay, let's check the gap. gap is correct. So what I've done now is removed all the spark plugs and gapped all the spark plugs. They were all, the gap was correct. Now, I'm not at 4,000 miles yet, it's at 3. I would expect the gap to be correct. I would expect that by the time it reaches 8,000 miles, maybe it'll change, maybe it won't. I don't know, we'll see. I'll let you guys know when the bike gets to that mileage, if it does change. But after removing the spark plugs and checking the condition and gapping, I applied a small amount of copper-based anti-seize to the threads and reinstalled the spark plugs in the same spark plugs holes that they came out of. And the spark plug torque is 13 Newton meters or 9.4 foot-pounds. If you don't know exactly what that means, use a torque wrench. That is not incredibly tight, that is just snug, and you don't want to over tighten your spark plug. You'll break it, you'll cause it to seize in there, you'll give yourself a headache. Just don't do it. Use a torque wrench. There's no reason not to. So that pretty much concludes our spark plug removal, gapping, and replacement video. I will be continuing on with the 4,000 mile service check. So if you would like, you are welcome to link down in the description and continue watching all the other services that the bike will be receiving for the 4,000 mile, aka 7,000 kilometer 6-month service. We've already checked our fuel hoses and crankcase breather hoses, etc. The next items up are checking the clutch and the brakes and wheels and so on. So with that, I hope this helps you. If you did enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I think I've got about 70 subscribers, so thank you for those that have subscribed. It really means a lot to me. You know, it takes time to create these videos and put in the work to process them, so I hope they're helping someone out there, and getting a thumbs up or a subscribe really makes it worth it. So thank you much. Have a good day.